In classical Buddhist psychology, the term loving kindness describes a system engineered with absolute precision. It functions as an active, cultivated cognitive technology. This technology is built on a specific etymological foundation. The Pali term metta evolved from the Sanskrit maitri, which was derived directly from the root mitra, signifying a friend. Metta represents a deliberate ontological stance, a systematic disposition of unconditional benevolence. To map this, classical texts place metta on a spectrum. On the far left sits the far enemy, states of ill will, aversion, and hostility. On the far right is the near enemy. This is a conditional, selfish, affectionate desire that mimics love but operates through attachment. Maintaining metta requires rigorous mindfulness to avoid sliding into this state. Methodically, the practice is about finding the exact center point. It is a calculated balance between clinical detachment and emotional attachment. This precise cognitive boundary was codified in the Visuddhimagga, a detailed 5th-century manual of meditation. Within this taxonomy, metta serves as a psychological antidote, deployed to neutralize the daily friction and resentment in human existence. We are going to trace the phylogeny of metta, examine its structural integration with intense Vipassana meditation, and look at the biological readouts from modern clinical laboratories. Analyzing universal benevolence as a rigorous technology allows us to map its specific psychological and physiological impact. The historical Buddha synthesized and re-engineered older, foundational technologies of the mind. The roots of Maitri appear in ancient Vedic literature. In texts like the Chandogya Upanishad, the practice of non-violence toward all creatures was a method to reach Brahmaloka, the divine realm. Simultaneously, parallels from Mana traditions and early Jainism utilized Maitri for strict karmic purification and absolute non-violence. By the time of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the technology of Maitri was integrated as a specific tool to achieve psychological serenity. Whether the goal was divinity, mental purity, or serenity, universal friendship functioned as the baseline operating system for ancient Indian cognitive science. As Buddhism formalized, this application branched across different schools. In the Theravada tradition, it is anchored by the Karaniya Metta Sutta, where the goal is to systematically break down the boundaries of the self. The Mahayana school expanded the scope of the practice through the concept of bodhicitta, the vow to attain enlightenment specifically for the purpose of freeing all beings from suffering. Then there is the Vajrayana, or esoteric approach. Instead of avoiding negative emotions, practitioners aim to directly distill those psychological poisons into their pure, functional essence. This leads to advanced techniques like Tonglen. A practitioner visualizes breathing in the suffering of others and breathing out happiness, a high-risk transmutation mechanism. While these paths utilize different cognitive vehicles, the engine driving all of them is this engineered benevolence. To generate this state, the tradition codified Metta Bhavana into a replicable algorithm. It requires the deliberate expansion of consciousness from a singular point. Stage 1 is the absolute prerequisite, establishing robust, self-directed kindness. Next, the practitioner anchors the mind by extending specific phrases to a benefactor, someone easy to love, and then to a neutral person. Stage 4 is the stress test. The practitioner directs identical cognitive goodwill toward a difficult person or enemy without breaking concentration. Finally, Stage 5 takes this stabilized focus and expands it universally, radiating in all directions toward all sentient beings without exception. These stages are a progressive stress test for the mind's concentration, ensuring the benevolence is unconditional before it is permitted to expand. This mechanical structure is essential to the early 20th century Burmese Vipassana movement. This tradition separates into two tracks: samatha, which builds concentration, and vipassana, which generates insight. The modern emphasis on vipassana creates a clinical problem known as dry insight. By observing the suffering inherent in every physical sensation, the mind can experience severe psychological friction and brittleness. This chart illustrates the solution. Metta functions as a gladdening agent. It elevates the baseline of concentration, acting as a shock absorber that allows the mind to endure the deconstruction of reality. The Mahasi Sayadaw tradition uses an interwoven approach. When mental noting becomes too clinical or agitating, Metta is applied as a rapid balm to reset the practitioner's balance. By contrast, the Pa-Auk tradition mandates Metta as a rigid preparatory foundation. A practitioner must achieve deep concentration before any insight work begins. The SN Goenka method uses a sequential approach. After 9 days of intensive deconstruction, Metta is introduced on day 10 to broadcast the merits of the mind's purification. On a micro level, practitioners fuse mindful walking or breath focus with Metta phrases, using them to physically induce states of rapture and pleasure. In object-less Metta, the feeling of benevolence itself becomes the object of observation, witnessed as an impermanent, changing reality. In these Burmese lineages, Metta functions as a mandatory structural support column, engineered to bear the psychological weight of intense insight. These ancient contemplative architectures are now being analyzed in modern clinical laboratories to identify their specific biological correlates. Researchers are measuring Metta's impact on emotional regulation. Data indicates it downregulates the HPA axis, reducing stress responses while activating empathetic neural pathways. This chart tracks data from clinical pilot trials, indicating efficacy in chronic pain management and altered physiological responses. Current peer reviews emphasize the need for larger, more rigorous sample sizes to fully map these neural correlates. Behavioral science and neurobiology are identifying the physiological readouts for algorithms engineered thousands of years ago. Tracing this long trajectory, from ancient Vedic rituals all the way to modern neurobiology, reveals a consistent effort to engineer the human emotional response. The synergy is consistent. While insight practices strip away the illusion of a separate self, Metta defines the quality of the mind that remains. The end state of this deconstruction is an engaged, fiercely protective connection with reality. Mastering the immeasurable heart provides a replicable, precise framework for regulating the individual mind, and ultimately influencing our entire collective human experience.